I never thought I'd be standing here today, holding a pregnancy test with 2 pink lines while staring at the man who is simultaneously my neighbor, my employee, and the father of my unborn child. How did my perfectly organized life turn into this beautiful chaos? Let me take you back to where it all began. Sarah's voice trembled as she looked into James' eyes, both terrified and hopeful about their unexpected future together. If you're enjoying this story of unexpected love and complicated relationships, please hit that like button and subscribe to see more emotional journeys like this one. Your support means everything. The first time Sarah Chen saw James Miller struggling with grocery bags while trying to keep his 5-year-old daughter from running into the street, she didn't see a potential love interest. She saw a neighbor who clearly needed help. At 42, Sarah had long ago accepted that her life would revolve around her career. As the CEO of a thriving tech company, she had sacrificed personal relationships for professional success, and most days, she was content with that choice. "Need a hand?" she called out, jogging down the steps of their apartment building. James looked up, relief washing over his exhausted face. "That obvious, huh?" His daughter, Lily, peered at Sarah with curious eyes. "Are you a princess? You look like one." Sarah laughed, taking some bags from James. "No, just your new neighbor. I moved in last week. I'm Sarah. James Miller. And this little charmer is Lily." He smiled, the kind of smile that reached his eyes despite the obvious fatigue behind them. "Thanks for the rescue." That brief interaction should have been the extent of their relationship, friendly neighbors who occasionally nodded hello in the hallway. But fate had other plans. 3 days later, Sarah was reviewing applications for a senior developer position at her company when a familiar name caught her eye. James Miller. His resume was impressive: 15 years of experience, innovative projects, excellent recommendations. But there was a 2-year gap in his employment history, with only freelance work listed. Curiosity piqued, she called him in for an interview. When James walked into her office, the surprise on his face was priceless. "You're the CEO?" he asked, momentarily forgetting professional etiquette. "And you're the coding genius with the adorable daughter," she replied with a smile. Small world. During the interview, the employment gap became clear. James had been married to Lily's mother, Emma, who died from cancer 2 years ago. He'd stepped back from full-time work to care for his wife during her illness and then to help Lily adjust to life without her mother. "I'm ready to return to a regular position now," he explained. "Lily's starting kindergarten, and we've found our new normal, I guess you could say." Something about his quiet strength moved Sarah. She'd interviewed candidates with more recent experience, but none with James's combination of talent, perseverance, and genuine character. She offered him the job on the spot. "Are you sure?" he asked. "I might need some flexibility with hours sometimes, for Lily." "We can make it work," Sarah assured him. "My company believes in supporting families." The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd built a family-friendly company culture despite having no family of her own. Over the next 6 months, James proved himself invaluable at work. He brought fresh perspectives to projects, mentored younger developers, and still managed to leave by 5 p.m. most days to pick up Lily from after-school care. Sarah found herself looking forward to their morning elevator rides and occasional work discussions that stretched into personal territory. One evening, Sarah was working late when she heard a soft knock on her office door. James stood there, looking apologetic, with Lily beside him. "I'm so sorry to bother you," he said. "Lily's sitter had an emergency, and I have to finish this code before tomorrow's client meeting." "Daddy said you might have candy," Lily announced, cutting to what was clearly her priority. Sarah laughed. "As a matter of fact, I do." She pulled open her desk drawer to reveal a stash of chocolate. Emergency supplies. While James worked, Sarah found herself entertaining Lily, first with candy, then with stories about the pictures on her wall, and finally by helping her draw on the office whiteboard. It had been years since Sarah had spent time with a child, and Lily's uninhibited curiosity was refreshing. When James finished his work 2 hours later, he found them creating an elaborate fairy tale kingdom with markers. "Looks like you two are having fun," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "Sarah's going to come for dinner tomorrow," Lily informed him. "She promised to teach me how to make dumplings like her grandma used to make." James raised an eyebrow. "Did she now?" Sarah felt her cheeks warm. "I may have gotten carried away with the storytelling. But I'd be happy to come, if that's okay with you." "More than okay," James said softly. "It's about time we had a guest for dinner." That dinner led to another, and soon Sarah was a regular visitor at the Miller apartment. She taught Lily to fold dumplings, helped her with math homework, and found herself looking forward to evenings spent in their cozy living room more than the elegant restaurants and exclusive events that had once filled her social calendar. James, meanwhile, was seeing a side of his boss that few at the company ever witnessed. Not the polished, confident CEO, but a woman who snorted when she laughed too hard and who could recite entire scenes from animated movies she claimed to have watched, just for research. "Why aren't you married?" Lily asked one night as Sarah helped her into pajamas after a bubble bath. James had stepped out to take a work call. Sarah paused, considering how to answer. "I guess I was always too busy working." "That's silly," Lily declared with the brutal honesty of a 5-year-old. "Work isn't as important as love." "When did you get so wise?" Sarah asked, tapping Lily's nose. "Daddy says I'm an old soul," Lily replied proudly, though she clearly didn't understand what it meant. Later, after Lily was asleep, Sarah and James sat on his small balcony, sharing a bottle of wine. "Sorry about Lily's interrogation earlier," James said. "She doesn't understand boundaries yet." "It's fine," Sarah replied, swirling the wine in her glass. "It's a fair question. Sometimes I wonder myself." "And what's the answer?" James asked quietly. Sarah looked out at the city lights. "I always told myself I was choosing career over family. But looking back, I think I was just afraid." "Of what?" "Vulnerability. Losing control." She gave a small laugh. "Ironic for someone who takes business risks every day." James was silent for a moment. "After Emma died, I thought I'd never let myself be vulnerable again. The pain was too much." He looked at Sarah. "But lately, I've been thinking that closing yourself off is its own kind of pain." Their eyes met, and something shifted between them, an acknowledgement of feelings that had been growing for months. James set down his wine glass. "Sarah, Her phone rang, shattering the moment. A crisis at work, a server crash threatening a major client's data. She had to go. "I'm sorry," she said, already gathering her things. "It's okay. I understand." And she knew he did, which made her heart ache even more. The next few weeks were awkward. At work, they maintained strict professionalism. Sarah buried herself in a new product launch, while James requested to work remotely more often. Their evening dinners stopped. Sarah told herself it was for the best. Workplace relationships were complicated enough without adding a child to the equation. Then came the company retreat, a weekend at a mountain resort meant to build team cohesion. Sarah had planned to make a brief appearance and return to the city, but a sudden snowstorm made the roads impassable. Everyone, including the CEO, was stuck. That evening, after team-building activities and dinner, Sarah found James sitting alone by a fire pit outside, staring at the flames. "Mind if I join you?" she asked. He looked up, his expression unreadable in the flickering light. "It's your company retreat." She sat beside him, close enough to feel his warmth but not touching. "I miss you," she said simply. "And Lily. We miss you too." He poked at the fire with a stick. "She asks about you every day." "And what about you?" Sarah asked, her heart pounding. Do you ask about me too? James turned to face her. I don't need to ask. You're all I think about. The confession hung between them, as delicate and beautiful as the snowflakes falling around them. This time, when they leaned toward each other, there was no phone call to interrupt their kiss. That night changed everything. They agreed to keep their relationship private at work, but outside the office, they became inseparable. Sarah found herself building a life she'd never imagined, helping with school projects, attending parent-teacher conferences alongside James, learning to navigate the complex territory of being a parental figure to a child who still remembered and loved her mother. You're not trying to replace Emma, James assured her one night after Lily had asked if she could call Sarah Mom someday. You're creating your own relationship with her. 6 months into their relationship, Sarah faced an unexpected challenge. Her company was being courted for acquisition by a larger tech firm, a deal that would make her incredibly wealthy but would require relocating to the opposite coast. It's an amazing opportunity, James said when she told him, his voice carefully neutral. You've worked your whole life for something like this. But what about us? Sarah asked. I can't ask you and Lily to uproot your lives. And I can't ask you to give up your dream, he countered. They were at an impasse, both unwilling to demand sacrifice from the other, both unwilling to be the one to end what they'd built together. The decision was made for them in the most unexpected way. 3 weeks later, Sarah sat in her bathroom, staring at a pregnancy test. Positive. At 43, when she'd long ago accepted she would never have biological children, she was pregnant. When she told James, his reaction wasn't what she expected. Instead of shock or concern about the timing, his face lit up with pure joy. A baby, he whispered, placing his hand gently on her still flat stomach. Our baby? His reaction broke something open inside her. All the fears and doubts about her ability to balance motherhood with her career, all the worries about being too old or too career-focused, they didn't disappear, but they were overshadowed by the love she saw in James's eyes. I'm turning down the acquisition, she told him. I want to stay here, with you and Lily. Are you sure? He asked. That's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Sarah placed her hand over his. So is this. The pregnancy wasn't easy. At her age, there were complications. Morning sickness that lasted all day, bed rest during the second trimester, and the constant anxiety of high-risk status. Through it all, James was her rock and Lily her unexpected cheerleader, bringing her crackers and water and reading stories to the baby through Sarah's growing belly. Sarah's board of directors was surprisingly supportive when she shared her news, though she could tell some had concerns about her ability to lead while becoming a new mother. She addressed those concerns head-on, restructuring her leadership team and implementing new systems that would allow for more distributed decision-making. I'm not stepping back, she told them firmly. I'm stepping forward into a new chapter, both personally and professionally. As her due date approached, James began acting strangely, distracted, secretive, disappearing for hours without explanation. Sarah tried not to let her insecurities take over, but pregnancy hormones and business pressures made it difficult. Are you having second thoughts? She finally asked one night, her voice small. About us? James looked startled. God, no. Why would you think that? You've been distant. Secretive. She wiped away a tear, hating how emotional she'd become. I know this isn't what you planned, having another child at this stage of your life. James knelt before her, taking her hands in his. Sarah Chen, you and this baby are exactly what I want. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. I've been meeting with a jeweler, trying to find the perfect ring. I wanted to wait until it was ready, but I can't have you thinking for one more second that I'm not all in. He opened the box to reveal a stunning emerald ring. It's not a diamond because you once mentioned you found them overrated. It's emerald because it reminds me of the dress you wore the first day Lily and I had dinner with you. Sarah stared at the ring, then at James, who was now officially on one knee. "I'm not asking because of the baby," he continued. "I'm asking because I love you. Because Lily loves you. Because we want to be a family, officially, permanently, completely. Will you marry me?" Through tears, Sarah nodded. Yes. Yes to all of it. They were married 2 weeks later in a small ceremony in their apartment building's rooftop garden. Lily served as flower girl and ring bearer, proudly telling everyone that she was getting a new mom and a new baby. 1 month after the wedding, Sarah went into labor 3 weeks early. The delivery was difficult, but when the doctor placed their daughter in her arms, Sarah felt a completeness she'd never known was missing. "Hello, Emma," she whispered, looking up at James, who had tears streaming down his face at the name they'd chosen together, a way to honor the woman who had given them Lily, to keep her memory alive in their blended family. Lily climbed onto the hospital bed, peering at her baby sister with wonder. "She's so tiny," she whispered. "But don't worry, I'll teach her everything." As Sarah looked at her family, her husband, her stepdaughter, her newborn baby, she marveled at how completely her life had transformed in just 2 years. From solitary CEO to wife and mother of 2. From someone who measured success in profit margins to someone who counted tiny fingers and toes with awe. "What are you thinking?" James asked, noticing her contemplative expression. "That sometimes the best things in life are the ones you never planned for," she replied, shifting baby Emma to make room for Lily to snuggle closer. "And that I've never been happier to have my plans completely derailed." 6 months later, Sarah stood at a podium accepting an award for women in business leadership. With James and the girls watching proudly from the front row, she delivered a speech that went viral for its honesty. "We talk about work-life balance as if it's something to achieve, like a fixed state you can reach and maintain," she told the audience. "But I've learned it's more like a dance, constantly moving, adjusting, sometimes stumbling, but always in motion. Some days I feel like I'm failing at everything. Other days, I manage to hit all the right notes. But what matters isn't perfection, it's presence. Being fully present in whatever role I'm occupying at that moment." She looked directly at her family. 2 years ago, I thought I had it all figured out. I had a successful company, financial security, and a life that was entirely under my control. Then I met a single dad and his amazing daughter in the hallway of my apartment building, and everything I thought I knew about success and fulfillment was turned upside down. Sarah paused, her hand unconsciously moving to her wedding ring. "I didn't lose control of my life when I fell in love and became a mother. I gained a new perspective on what control really means. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is let go of our carefully constructed plans and open ourselves to unexpected possibilities." As she concluded her speech to thunderous applause, Sarah knew her story wasn't a fairy tale. There would be challenges ahead, balancing her company's needs with her family's, helping Lily navigate adolescence, raising baby Emma, and continuing to build her partnership with James. But for the first time in her life, she wasn't facing the future alone. Later that night, as they tucked the girls into bed, James pulled Sarah close. "You know, when Emma was sick, she made me promise something. She said, 'Promise me you'll be happy again someday.' For a long time, I didn't think that was possible." Sarah leaned into his embrace. "And now? Now I understand what she meant," he said softly. She knew that love doesn't diminish when it's shared. It multiplies. As they stood in the doorway watching their daughters sleep, Sarah reflected on the strange, beautiful journey that had brought them together. A chance meeting in a hallway. A job interview. A little girl who needed dumplings and stories. A pregnancy that wasn't planned but was deeply wanted. And through it all, the courage to embrace uncertainty instead of fearing it. From neighbor to boss to wife and mother, she whispered. "Not exactly the career path I had in mind." James laughed quietly. "The best promotions are the ones you never see coming." And as they closed the door and walked hand in hand to their bedroom, Sarah knew he was right. Some journeys can't be planned or charted. Sometimes, the most beautiful destinations are the ones you stumble upon by accident, when you're brave enough to open your heart to unexpected possibilities. 5 years later, Sarah sat in her home office, finishing a video call with her executive team. Through the window, she could see James in the backyard, pushing 7-year-old Emma on the swing while Lily, now 10, practiced cartwheels on the grass. The sight still made her heart swell with gratitude. Her company had continued to thrive, though she'd restructured it significantly. Instead of pursuing aggressive expansion, she'd focused on sustainable growth and workplace policies that supported families. The tech industry had initially been skeptical, but when retention rates soared and productivity increased, other companies began following her lead. "Mom! Mom! Watch this!" Emma called from the yard, attempting to pump her legs on the swing without her father's help. Sarah held up one finger to signal, "Just a minute," and quickly wrapped up her call. These days, she was better at setting boundaries between work and family time. Not perfect, there were still late nights and occasional weekend emergencies, but better. As she stepped into the yard, Lily ran up to her. "I got the lead in the school play," she announced, her face flushed with excitement. "I'm going to be Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz." "That's amazing, sweetheart." Sarah hugged her, marveling at how tall she was getting. "We'll need to practice your songs together." James caught her eye over Emma's head and smiled, that same warm smile that had first caught her attention years ago, now deepened by shared experiences and challenges overcome together. Their journey hadn't been without difficulties. Sarah had faced criticism from some who claimed she was setting feminism back by embracing traditional family roles alongside her career. Others questioned her commitment to her company when she reduced her working hours to be home for dinner most nights. James had weathered his own challenges, including colleagues who made assumptions about his career advancement being tied to his relationship with the CEO. They'd worked through these issues together, learning when to fight external perceptions and when to simply let their choices speak for themselves. The most difficult moments had come from within their family. Lily had gone through a period of confusion and grief when she was 8, suddenly missing her birth mother intensely and feeling guilty about loving Sarah. It had taken patience, therapy, and many tearful conversations to help her understand that love wasn't a finite resource, that she could cherish memories of Emma while fully embracing Sarah as her mother too. "Daddy says we're having a special dinner tonight," Emma said, jumping off the swing and running to Sarah. "Is it because of my good report card?" Sarah scooped her up, still amazed that this spirited little girl with James's eyes and her stubborn chin had grown from the tiny baby born during that frightening early delivery. "That's part of it," she said, exchanging a meaningful look with James. They had news to share. That evening, after a celebratory dinner for both Lily's casting news and Emma's report card, Sarah and James gathered the girls in the living room. "We have something important to tell you," James began, taking Sarah's hand. "Are we getting a puppy?" Emma asked hopefully. It was her standard question whenever a family meeting was called. "Not this time," Sarah laughed. "But we are adding something to our family." She took a deep breath. "How would you feel about having a little brother or sister?" Lily's eyes widened. "You're having another baby?" "Not exactly," James said. "We're adopting a baby. There's a little boy who needs a family, and we have room in our hearts and our home." They explained how they'd been working with an adoption agency for months, and how they'd recently been matched with a newborn whose young mother wasn't able to care for him. They showed pictures of the tiny baby with a shock of dark hair and solemn eyes. "His name is Michael," Sarah said softly. "And if everything goes as planned, he'll be coming home with us next week." The girls' reactions were mixed: excitement, curiosity, and a touch of apprehension about how a new baby would change their family dynamic. But by bedtime, they were making plans for how to welcome their new brother and arguing good-naturedly about who would get to help more with baby duties. Later, as Sarah and James prepared for bed, she found herself reflecting on the twists and turns that had brought them to this moment. "Did you ever imagine this would be your life?" she asked, leaning against him as they stood by their bedroom window, looking out at the quiet neighborhood. "When we first met in that hallway with the grocery bags?" James wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Not in my wildest dreams. I was just trying to get through each day back then." "Me too," Sarah admitted. "I thought I had everything figured out. Career path, 5-year plan, retirement strategy." She laughed softly. "No contingency plan for falling in love with my neighbor who became my employee who became my husband." "Some things you can't plan for," James murmured, kissing her neck. "Like how a brilliant, beautiful CEO would completely upend my life in the best possible way." As they stood there together, Sarah thought about the baby boy who would soon join their family, about Lily's upcoming performance as Dorothy, about Emma's determination to learn to ride a bike without training wheels this summer. She thought about the company she'd built and transformed, about the leaders she'd mentored who were now creating their own paths. Most of all, she thought about the woman she'd been before, driven, successful, but walled off from the messy, complicated joy of deep connection. She didn't regret her past choices, they had made her who she was. But she was profoundly grateful for the unexpected detour that had led her here, to this life rich with love and purpose. "You know what I've learned," she said, turning in James's arms to face him. "That sometimes the most important business decision you can make is to let someone else into your heart." James smiled, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "And sometimes the bravest thing a single dad can do is trust that there's room for new love after loss." As they held each other in the quiet of their home, with their daughters sleeping down the hall and the promise of their new son's arrival just days away, Sarah knew that this beautiful, messy, unpredictable life they'd built together, was her greatest achievement. Not because it was perfect. Not because it followed any prescribed path to success. But because it was authentic and hard-won and filled with the kind of love that transforms from the inside out. From neighbor to CEO boss to wife and mother, Sarah Chin Miller had discovered that the most meaningful journeys are rarely the ones we plan. They're the ones we're brave enough to embrace when life offers an unexpected detour. And as she fell asleep in her husband's arms that night, she was certain of one thing: she wouldn't change a single step of the path that had led her home. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more emotional journeys about love, family, and finding happiness in unexpected places. Remember, sometimes the most beautiful chapters of our lives begin with moments we never saw coming. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let us know what other stories you'd like to hear.